Hi, and welcome to the Amberdata podcast. I'm Chris Martin, analytics engineer at Amberdata. Today, we'll be joined with Blake West, the CTO and co-founder of Warbler Labs and Goldfinch. We have a really interesting conversation today talking about Goldfinch's governance token, UID or unique ID, similar to decentralized IDs or DID, the current state of DeFi, and the future state of DeFi. Please stay tuned, and we'll be joined by Blake shortly. Hey, Blake, welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you here. We have a lot to talk about. Let's get started. Give us a bit of an intro about yourself. What are you working on and how did you get into crypto?
Yeah, sure thing. And thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. So let's see, quick intro on myself. You and I actually worked together at Coinbase for a while. So that was where I was before I started Goldfinch, which is a decentralized credit lending protocol on Ethereum. Goldfinch focuses on real world borrowers. So unlike a lot of other crypto lending folks, like the BlockFi, Celsius, the even a lot of our competitors, Maple, TrueFi, those kind of folks, a lot of them were focusing on sort of crypto borrowers, people who were doing stuff in the crypto space. And from the beginning, we've been very focused on real world stuff that didn't have anything to do with crypto itself, and trying to be uncorrelated from the rest of the crypto markets. And so that's it's worked out well. We still have all our borrowers are paying back. No one's defaulting yet. It's great. Cross your fingers, and we have over 100 million of loans active right now that are outstanding in over borrowers in over 20 different countries.
Awesome. Where did the idea for Goldfinch come from?
So my co-founder and I, who also was at Coinbase, Mike, the two of us, I'd say, kind of late 2019. I mean, just broadly, we were always kind of thinking about starting a company, and we're obviously loved the crypto space while we were at Coinbase, and we've been kind of interested in the crypto space even before joining Coinbase. Same with my co-founder, Mike. And we, late 2019, we were starting to see some of these kind of, I'd say, green shoots of DeFi. That was like around, Compound and Aave and Uniswap were starting to pick up a little bit of steam at that time. And so kind of going into 2020, we were thinking more seriously about, hey, is there something we could do in DeFi? We joined this program called the A16Z Crypto Startup School in kind of early 2020. They actually just did, I think they're doing another program like right now, their first one since the one they did in 2020. At the time, that was the first one they ran. The program was very relaxed. It was just like there was no money involved. There was no investment. They were just getting people together who wanted to potentially start stuff in crypto and just having them meet once a week to talk about stuff. We met in person twice, and then the pandemic happened, and it was all online after that. But it was a great program. I met a lot of people. We got to discuss a lot of ideas. It was just a good forcing function for us to like really start looking throughout the whole landscape. And so more directly to your question, how did we kind of get the idea? We were interested in DeFi. We were seeing some success with this on-chain lending from Compound and Aave, where you put up collateral that's on chain, like a ETH or whatever, and they borrow USDC against it. That was cool, but that's not even really most lending. What we saw there was that you were seeing success on something that's actually this total niche of lending, which is kind of asset-backed over collateralized lending, and that is it's great. It's cool. It was really pioneering, but we were like, man, can we do that for regular lending? Like where actually people don't have all the money up front, because that's 99.9% of lending in the world. And can we try and bring the benefits of doing it on chain to that universe? So we knew that was going to be hard. We knew it was going to take a lot of crossing the kind of off-chain, on-chain barrier, but we found that to be really exciting. And that's kind of what got us interested in it.
Yeah, really interesting. And how does Warbler Labs come into this? Where did Warbler Labs come from?
So Warbler Labs is a company that supports the Goldfinch protocol. So the protocol, we view as decentralized. It has a token where people are voting on the outcomes and what things should be happening next. But Warbler Labs is a protocol company on the side that supports the protocol, similar to the way a lot of other things in crypto work. Engine Node to the Graph Foundation and the Ethereum Foundation to Ethereum and stuff like that.
Yeah, cool. That makes sense. So let's talk about a little bit more about DeFi lending and the way that it works today with a lot of these protocols. If we take the example of Aave, essentially users deposit funds into a pool. They can earn rewards for those deposits, borrow against those funds, paying interest in return. Um, with Aave, borrowers are required to maintain a certain level of collateral or they'll face liquidation.
Mhm.
This is pretty similar to how it works in TradFi. Um, but all of this happens on chain and programmatically. Uh,
Mhm.
with Goldfinch, you described a bit about how uh, this has changed with real world assets. Can you tell me more about how borrowers and lenders on Goldfinch interact with each other? And are we saying that Goldfinch is closer to Lending Club than it is to Aave?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And the short answer is that it's not like a lending club. It's different in that the borrowers on Goldfinch are companies. So they are, and they're tend to be fintech lenders from all over the world. So, an example company, one of the first loans we did was to this company called PayJoy. So they are a fintech lender. They do smartphone financing. So if you want to buy a smartphone in Mexico and you don't have the cash up front to pay for it, that's okay. PayJoy will get you the phone. You don't have the phone. What PayJoy does is they have special software on the phone, and if you don't pay for your phone, they will just shut it off remotely. And so most people want their phone to work, so most people pay the loan. And so PayJoy has great repayment rates, and um, they got a loan from the Goldfinch protocol. But there's a big difference there because individuals, like in the lending club, individuals don't have as much reputation at stake. They don't have as much need to be borrowing, and so the repayment rates are much worse. You're also underrated individuals just is very very difficult, right? People are unique, and you need to have a lot of stats on them and stuff to do that, which you may or may not have on chain. And so it's definitely not like a lending club, and it's related to these businesses. And those businesses, they need money to grow. Money is a productive asset for them. It's primarily lending to lenders who then on lend to their local markets, and they have the licenses and expertise within their local market to be lending to individuals or businesses. This actually gets to this other thing. So a lot of people ask, why are we doing stuff in emerging markets, right? And like why are the companies there? This is really because that's where a lot of the need is, right? There's a huge financing gap in emerging markets on quality businesses who could take money and use it productively, but the gap is with the amount of money that's actually there available for them. And so that gap specifically, we kind of tackle in this kind of like $1 to $20 million range. If you're just starting out, and you want to raise less than $1 million, they might be able to do that in their local capital markets. But if you want to raise 20 million above, that kind of starts to get the attention of Western institutions. People are willing to write checks at that size, but there is a gap in between there, and Goldfinch helps to fill that. And there's a lot of capital on chain that was looking for uncorrelated yields, and that's how those two connect. And so Goldfinch is this set of smart contracts as a protocol and a platform that allows for these investors who have USDC to put it into these smart contracts for these borrowers who are vetted by the investors get to then borrow it down. And because they're high quality companies that have reputation and have a track record, you have a lot more confidence. And also, I should say there are legal agreements that are signed between the company and the investors directly. So there's no middleman here. It's just a direct thing between those investors and the borrowers.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you mentioned PayJoy as a use case.
Mhm.
Um, what other creative ways are individuals take or corporate companies taking these loans? I know they're big in emerging markets like Mexico,
Mhm.
Nigeria, Vietnam. What are
Yeah.
some of the creative ways that they're using it?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, yeah, people use it for all kinds of different stuff because there's so many different ways to lend, and everybody kind of has their own little niche. So, another example is this company in Kenya called Tugende. They have motorcycles that they lease out to people, kind of this rent to own motorcycle thing, and that's because those people in Kenya who are the end borrowers, they want to use those motorcycles to do gig economy delivery work, right? So they might give the
Mhm.
equivalent of like a DoorDash or an Uber or something like that, and they get paid to do that. And so that motorcycle is a productive asset for them, and they get to create value and more money in the economy. And they do that through a loan of the motorcycle, and that motorcycle will have a GPS on it. And so if the person doesn't pay back, well, Tugende can just go get the motorcycle and take it back, and they're able to, if they need to, they could sell the motorcycle for cash stuff. So there's underlying assets, there's real value there. It's Tugende is another example. There's another example in Southeast Asia. There are buy now, pay later people. There are others who create software for small businesses to let them sort of do their accounting, right? And then they understand what the cash flows are of that business. It makes it easier for that company to then make loans to those small businesses and stuff like that. So there's just a bunch of different examples, but it's all lending to mostly small businesses and individuals, and they're using technology in some way to have an edge in the way that they do the lending.
Yeah, that's really interesting. In terms of collateral, or the loans themselves, so I know you guys are using USDC. What
Mhm.
was the consideration for USDC? Did you consider any other tokens?
I mean, the at the end of the day, we felt like USDC was the most trusted of the stable coins that are out there. Helps to get the borrowers comfortable as well as investors, and that is, so far proven to work out pretty well. USDC has weathered a lot of storms so far,
Hmm.
and it's regulated and backed by U.S. laws and banking systems and stuff like that. So that's the where the choice is for USDC. And sorry, was there another part of your question?
Yeah. Did you consider any other tokens, like for example, Circle using Euro C as a European stablecoin, or
Yes.
any other type? Mhm.
So the short answer is like, no, we haven't really seriously considered using other tokens right now. I think the idea of other currencies is really interesting, and I think it's an area where DeFi can help a lot. And I was really excited to see that Circle launched the Euro coin, and hopefully they'll do more in lots of other, lots of other countries because as great as the US dollar is and as much influence as it has in the financial system, still, most of the world uses some other currency to like do their daily lives, right? And so
Yeah.
like for our borrowers, for example, they have to deal with a lot of FX costs and hedging because they're lending in, USD, or they're borrowing in USD, and then they need to turn that into whatever the local currency is. The shillings in Kenya, or the naira in Nigeria, or Indian rupees, et cetera. And so I think having that stuff on chain can make the FX process a lot simpler, and having those stable coins so that they're backed and trusted. I think is going to be a big part of that. So hopefully, we'll start see more of that happening over the coming years, and that should add some more utility to the network.
Awesome. Let's talk a bit about incentives. So Goldfinch has the governance token GFI, and from what I understand, it's a bit different than most DeFi governance tokens. It sort of acts as a flywheel in the protocol. Some DeFi protocols use the token as an incentive for borrowers or lenders when they invest in a pool. Um, and those tokens sometimes have governance rights, but it seems like GFI is a way to signal consensus, or signal um, your direction in a pool. How does GFI work?
Yeah, so right now, GFI does so it is used as an incentive for investors coming in. They can be rewarded with GFI for staying in the pool. So that's the thing, and it does come with governance rights. So people vote on things. We have vibrant community, a lot of votes going on pretty regularly within the GFI community, and so that part is there. There's also this thing called membership, where participants in the system, if they also own GFI, they can put both of those things together and access yield enhancements on the investments that they have, which so far has gone pretty well. And our co-founder, my co-founder Mike, wrote a whole post here about this idea of participant-centric tokenomics, which is as opposed to owner-centric tokenomics, right? Where we think the right question to ask on tokenomics is not how can I get owners of my token to have more utility or to like do XYZ thing. It's how do I get participants in my system, the people who are actually using the protocol, to want to be owners, right? And how can we incentivize them to want to be owners, or how can we keep those flywheels of participation working by using the token? And so membership is our first sort of example of that. But I think it's a great thing. And I think tokenomics should be evolving, because I think in the past, sometimes people were just like a little, oh, hey, you have the token. Maybe you just stake it. I don't know. And maybe we'll give you more tokens. And
Yeah,
it was hard to answer why is this really benefiting the protocol, right? And what action is it incentivizing? And so other than just holding the token, right? Which I don't think is really sufficient. And you want to be thinking about what's the value your protocol is creating, who are the users of that value, and how do we get them to act like owners?
yeah, I totally agree. I think this is a really good step for emerging tokenomics. Um, One of the things that I noticed doing some research on Goldfinch was you've had this Dune dashboard, uh, which is
Mhm.
open to anybody to see. I think this is a really cool step. Uh, it's pretty essential, in my opinion, for protocols to provide data and
Mhm.
usage statistics and metrics. So I think, I just want to commend you guys for taking a great stab at that.
Oh yeah, I mean, thanks. And this is one of the things I think is just great about crypto in general, right? All this data is publicly available. Even if we weren't putting up a dashboard, someone else could. And there's nothing that really stops anyone from making their own dashboard. Other people have made their own dashboards. In fact, if you look on Dune, there's other kind of community-made dashboards on Goldfinch. Some that compare us with competitors in the space. Some people, people try and create sort of an industry, I guess, but like the people who are doing on-off chain lending, sort of bridging those two things. Let's compare all those protocols together and how are they doing? And I think that's just like such a cool thing about crypto that there's so much transparency. It's hard to run away from that. You can't hide, I guess is what I'm saying on the performance of the different protocols.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to more community driven uh, information and dashboards for other things like proof of reserves or um, how networks are doing comparing L1s and L2s. I think this is
Mhm.
a huge thing about the crypto industry is that so many people are really technical and understand it so well.
Yeah.
Um, so let's switch gears. I want to talk about UID. So I have a podcast coming after this with Megan Monroe Coleman. She's a compliance officer or head of compliance at TBD, where
Mhm.
they're also building a DID solution.
Mhm.
Um, but one of the aspects that I like about Goldfinch is the use of soulbound NFTs.
Mhm.
These NFTs are essentially untransferable and they're utilized in the protocol. Can you tell me a bit more about this idea of UID, how it works, and how unique identity as a broader vision emerged?
Yeah, sure. So, coming back to just the original, thing of what we do here, right? It's lending to businesses. Those businesses have KYC and AML requirements that are non-negotiable, really. They can't just YOLO that away. They have reputations to uphold. They have to remain in compliance with their local authorities. And KYC and AML is a pretty global regime. And so uh, basically we had to have some way to tell these borrowers like, yes, you're not taking money from a terrorist. That's like really what it comes down to. And when you're doing things on chain and it's anonymous, that can be a little scary to them. And so when we were getting started, so we got started in mid 2020, and started doing our very first loans kind of December of 2020 and into January 21. But this KYC thing was always an issue, and we needed to make sure that we had solutions for it. There was some kind of hacked together solutions initially that were like a little bit off chain, but like we wanted something that was on chain. We wanted something where it really like just worked and could also be decentralized, where other people could make their own front ends, right? And we thought this kind of front end only thing wouldn't really suffice for that. We wanted it to have the ability to be decentralized, and so we created UID, which is, as I said, it's a soulbound NFT. It represents the fact that you have been KYC'd. So no personal information is ever on chain. That's a guarantee. But we need some way to still say this address has been KYC'd. It's gone through some sort of check, and that's so we enforce that at the smart contract level that every investor has to have gone through this check, meaning they have to possess a UID. Um, at the time, there really wasn't anybody else doing that. That's why we built our own. It's overall, it's a pretty simple product, but it got done what we needed to get done. Since then, there's been a lot of companies that are starting out. They're starting to do this kind of DID work. You mentioned one of them, but there are like a bunch others. And so I'm excited to see whether like what they do with that. I think ID can definitely be a full-time product, full-time job, and it's not something we're focused on here. We're kind of doing it for our own purposes. Though other protocols have organically started to use it because it's just out there. It works. People don't need to do their own UID if they don't want to, and they can come and just get it through us. We have a front end for people to sign up. But other protocols, it's all free and open to use. So I think it's awesome that we've seen some uptake of it, and I'm excited to see what will happen over the next year or two.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting point in crypto going forward. Do you think that like UID or DID generally, the purpose of it, is it staying ahead of regulations for protocols? Like, are they using it in the event where some type of compliance or regulation comes through that you have to KYC users?
I think that is for sure an interesting, or not interesting, that is going to be a use case. Like regulation, the regulation with KYC and AML is strict, and it is global, and it is like severe. Like people can go to jail for this. And like I forget what they call it, but there's something where it's like strict compliance or whatever, where it's like even if you don't know that you're doing it, even if it was just a mistake, it doesn't matter. Like you have the responsibility to make sure it doesn't happen. And so for that reason, yes, I think regulation will be a big reason why DID and UIDs solutions start to pick up. I think regulation around this kind of stuff is probably inevitable. But that said, it can improve the product experience. It opens up new avenues of what people can do with their products. I mean, just a simple example would be giving first-time users a credit or something, right? Oh yeah, you get tokens if you're the first-time user, and if we're going to do it on these tiers or whatever, put in $100, you get $5 back, $1,000, you get $10 back or whatever. That kind of thing can't really be done when everybody's anonymous, right?
Yeah.
And it's also harder to do customer support. It's harder to track people's behavior and usage over time so that you can improve the product for them. You just don't know who your users are. You can't talk to them. So I think things like identity and just login and stuff where we're getting back to some of these product things that we know work in other domains and being able to use them in crypto will be helpful as well. And identity is a key piece of enabling that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree on the use cases. I mean, as a data scientist, one of the things that we run into a lot is accuracy. And having something like UID to accurately measure the number of addresses or the activity levels of certain protocols is huge for us.
Yeah, that's
Um,
another super clear one. Just how many actual people are using Ethereum? We don't know.
yeah, exactly. It's actually difficult to suss that out. You have to use all kinds of heuristics, and even
Yeah,
that's very inaccurate generally.
yes.
Cool. So what do you think is the future of DeFi in terms of borrowing lending? Do you see more real world use cases like what you're doing at Goldfinch, or do you see it more leaning the other way towards more digital assets and um, yeah,
I think it's going to be both. I think naturally over time we'll start to see more real world stuff because there just is more. I mean, I even don't really love this term real world. I know we use it. I use it a bunch, but I don't really love the term because I mean, sure they think digital art, that's real world too. Somebody wants it. There's a human being behind that. I think we've kind of like really what we mean is it's like it's not super correlated with the crypto market or it's less digital or something like that. But I think they'll both be there. They're both actually, real world. And but you just look at the economy, right? Most of the economy is not digital collections. It's not crypto. It's other stuff, right? It's everything from food to entertainment to media to manufacturing. All those things are not crypto related, and they all need lending usually. And so I think naturally we'll see more of that show up over time. Now, exactly how fast each side goes, the digital art thing, for example, lending there is nice on chain because a lot of the flows are already on chain. The cash is already on chain. And so you can do more powerful things with it. And with money already there, it makes sense that you would get your loans there, right? And so I'm not sure which one it'll be, but I think it'll be both. And the part I'm not sure is just like how much each side will go and at what rate.
yeah, that makes sense. I think time will tell.
Yeah.
What's next for Warbler Labs?
So we've put out roadmaps and stuff in the past, and one of these things that we just recently announced was the idea of callable loans. So this is something the community voted on in the last 2 weeks, something like that. But just trying to respond to the market here, where there are people who I think liquidity is more important than it's ever been. And so we want the ability for investors to be able to get more liquidity on their investments that they're making. In the past, a lot of things on Goldfinch have been, 2-year, 3-year, even 4-year investments. And, now people, as I said, they really prize liquidity. And so this callable structure allows for people to say, hey, I want my capital back, and they'll get it back within, 90 days. There's kind of like a quarterly window. So it can vary a little bit. You might get it much as little as 60 days. It might be a little bit longer depending on exactly when you request, but it's basically every quarter. And that's great for investors, right? They can earn yield consistently. It's still a 2-year loan, but if you need the capital sooner, you can call it back. And so that's a whole new structure. And I think is broadly thinking about liquidity. How do we help enhance liquidity through crypto mechanics? Because I mean, one thing that's cool about this callable structure is crypto really legitimately makes this easier for a borrower to deal with than would be possible in a more traditional sense. Especially when you have a lot of investors. So to really give an example of what I mean, like if you're a borrower and you have 100 investors, like you would on a platform like ours, if or more investors, but let's say you have 100, if you have different people requesting capital, you need to then look, hey, I've got all this money out, I see all these different requests coming in, I need to then like make individual payouts to each one of these people and get their bank account info and blah blah blah. It's kind of a hassle. But with a smart contract, they can sort of summate all that, right? We can just say, okay, in aggregate, this many people wanted it and this many people came in or whatever. So you just send one amount of money into the smart contract and that's all you need to do. It's like one thing once. It could be 1,000 investors, it could be 2 investors, it doesn't matter. The smart contract will handle it all. And it doesn't matter where they are in the world, it doesn't matter what their bank account system is. You don't need to think about any of that as a borrower. You just make one payment to the smart contract and you can handle infinite numbers of investors and all their requests. The smart contract will do all the calculations and all the actual payouts because the user will come and just claim their capital from the smart contract. So we think this is a really exciting area where crypto's making it operationally easier to create these more liquid structures. And so I think we're going to be pushing it in that direction.
Yeah, looking forward to see what happens out of that. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of interesting use cases that you didn't think of.
Yeah.
Last question. What's one thing, either related to Goldfinch and Warbler Labs or not, that you think that the crypto community isn't talking enough about?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think the first thing that jumps to mind is just user experience and talking to users and having and the reason I think about that is because I think crypto's just been pretty bad about this. And I feel like we were in some senses cursed over the last 2 years that like it almost seemed like you couldn't screw up in crypto. Like everything
Yeah.
people were doing, just price goes up, users are coming in, money's flowing in out of nowhere. Like you didn't have to think about things like UX. You didn't have to think about some of these and like talking to your customers. Like it seems like we'll just put up a crypto project and it'll be great and you'll make a bunch of money. And I think that was a bit of a curse. I think it took people away from the fundamentals of running a business, ourselves included. I think everybody was kind of victim to this at some level. But I think the bear market coming in is really good for reminding us of like, hey, like we need to step it up, right? We need to have an experience that actually competes with Web 2 and everything you can do there. And so I think the community as a whole really needs to take that to heart, right? We need to build experiences and products that are actually better to use for a normal person than what was possible with Web 2. And I'm excited. I think that things like account abstraction, which just went live, and things like layer 2s, and the Cancun upgrade, I think is going to do that call data thing to make layer 2s even cheaper this year. All that stuff is going to really help. And I think then it's incumbent upon developers and builders to take advantage of these new tools and these cheaper and faster crypto rails to make sure that we can actually create great experiences. And so I think that's a big thing that we're going to be thinking about at Warbler, and I think the industry should be thinking more about too.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I remember doing some full sends on some horrible UIs. It's easy to fat finger
Oh my
and
God, the wallet
make
stuff.
any mistake.
It pains me so much how much money people have lost because MetaMask hasn't just taken the time to say, hey, this is maybe a risky transaction. Like it feels like it'd be so easy for them. I don't mean to like go, bad about MetaMask here.
Yeah,
I use it. I really appreciate all the work that they've done, but oh man, it's killing. I had a tweet about this earlier. I was like, please just like tell me this is a contract that was just deployed an hour ago. That alone would like tell me the
yeah.
deployment contract would be a big, great heuristic on safety.
It's too easy to make a mistake, especially on like a MetaMask or any decentralized wallet.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Like when I say UX here, I really do mean that whole experience end to end. And like if someone loses money because they they fat fingered something or they got caught in a phishing scam and their wallet could have prevented it. Like, that's someone who might never want to come back to crypto for another year or two or 10 because they're like, well, I don't know. I can't use the wallet. I lost, all this money because I got caught in a scam, blah, blah, blah. Like, we really need to think about that experience and the safety of the user.
Absolutely. Happens way more than it should.
Yeah.
Um, Blake, appreciate your time. This has been a really interesting conversation. This has been a fantastic talk about DeFi, about UIDs, about the future of borrowing and lending. Really love your insights. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks so much, Chris. It's great to see you again and talk to you soon.